back to the Magic Morning Wood. I'm trying to inject a bit of excitement and feeling. It's just kind of
a little bit like a ghost there.
Or a horse.
Oh yeah, I guess
yeah.
So. Right.
Good start, huh?
Yeah, good start. Yeah.
So anyway, he's who are you, Ron? I mean, who are you?
I'm Ron.
Okay, I'm Clive. And welcome to the Magic Morning Wood stable, where we're chewing on sugar cubes. And all right, let's cancel this shit.
All right, yeah.
Right. So, Magic Morning Wood, you know the deal. We talk about films, natural algorithm, blah blah blah. My turn. Last time it was the Mac. So my reaction to the Mac was 1975's The Candy Tangerine Man. Now we're available in a nice HD transfer from the good people at Vinegar Syndrome. First watch for you, Ron?
Yes.
Okay, right. So the Candy Tangerine Man I chose because the Mac was a Pimpin' movie. This is a Pimpin' movie, which I kind of remember quite favorably as a good bit of Pimpin'.
There are a lot of similarities between these two movies.
Yes.
They would have been better as a double bill, I think.
Right, that's what kind of struck me this time watching it was, oh, this isn't just another Pimp film. This was clearly heavily inspired by the success of the Mac, I think. So this time out, it stars John Daniels of Black Shampoo fame as the Black Baron, who is a Los Angeles Sunset Strip pimp by night and family man by day, I guess.
Right. Yes.
Who keeps the two things separate. He lives out in the suburbs with his extremely sexy wife, Marilyn Joy, who was in a whole bunch of interesting kind of driving. I think she was in a lot of Al Adamson movies. I'm always pleased to see Marilyn Joy. She doesn't get naked in this though. That's the only.
No, because she's the good wife, right? So.
Yeah, which is a bit of a shame. It's always fun to see Marilyn Joy naked. But anyway, I like seeing Marilyn Joy anyway. She's kind of she's something quite bubbly about her personality. She's kind of that naughty glint in her eye, right?
Right. Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Is she like usually in sort of softcore or hardcore films or
softcore?
I don't know
yeah.
Softcore. Okay.
Yeah. So yes, but the real meat of the story is when he's doing his pimp stuff, and much like the Mac, he has racist cops, rival Italian mobsters, rival pimps, and I mean, yeah, that's kind of it really. It's I suppose the main difference, you would say, spoilers, between this and the Mac is he does kind of get out of the life towards the end of the film, but it's on his terms, right? Rather than him kind of failing to, he kind of gets out more or less clean, right?
Right.
Yeah. Very different from the Mac, I suppose, in so much as, or for a start, it's coming from directed by Matt Simba, whose real name is Matteo Ottaviano, who kind of an interesting career. Started off in the theatre, I believe, was a Mr. Jane Mansfield for a while, was a couple of years married to Jane.
Oh, really? Okay.
Directed some other kind of bizarro, weirdo films, which are quite interesting, like The Witch Who Came from the Sea, for example, which is one I think we're going to probably talk about at some point. And also ended up directing episodes of Glow in the 80s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Of the actual Glow or of the Netflix Glow?
The original Glow.
The original Glow. Oh, okay.
He's still around though. He's still around. He's still alive. Oh, and also I suppose worth mentioning, he did direct a few like really early, late 60s, early 70s, pre-Deep Throat kind of hardcore films when they were still kind of, semi-educational in tone, right? To kind of get around the fences. Like he made a couple of them as well. It's a kind of interesting fellow. So how did the Mac? No, not the Mac. We talked about the Mac. How did the Candy Tangerine Man go down?
The kanji man.
Candy Tangerine Man. There's a film.
There's the Japanese spin-off.
We should
Yeah.
mention as well that he drives a candy-colored Rolls Royce, right, with machine guns, which is why
That comes out of the headlights, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't actually know why it was called the candy. Was it because the Tangerine Man? Was it because
I think because of the Rolls Royce, yeah.
Well, why tangerine though? Was it tangerine colored? I don't think so.
I don't know. You got me there. It's a good title, though.
Yeah, well, yeah. I was curious. I was remember thinking when I was watching it. I will give a little bit of a disclaimer. It's been probably 2 weeks since I've watched this movie, so I'm doing my best to remember it. But I remember thinking that I didn't understand why it was called Candy Tangerine Man. That even though it was sort of sounded very kind of like 70s, kind of cinema, kind of. It sounded almost like a funk song. Kind of thing, But at the same time, I didn't really know why it was called that.
It's a memorable title as well. I think that's the good thing it's got going. Is people remember the name, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Except for when you call it the kanji tangerine.
Apart from when I called, but that was actually just a stroke of brilliance, masquerading as a mistake.
Of course, right. I mean, as I said, I mean, just like you made the mistake of calling it the Mac. I remember thinking like, wow, this movie is quite similar to the Mac, and as I said, it would have made a better double bill, I think, with the Mac, just because they're so similar, and because there had been a few weeks between watching the two of them. I think putting them side to side would have been a much more fun exercise in terms of finding the actual like, oh well, this is the same, but this is different, or this was obviously a takeoff and so that. But yeah, it was the Mac. Remind me that was the one where they go and get on the train at the end. No, what happened at the end of the Mac? No, in the bus.
He kind of leaves town on the bus that he came in.
Right.
Yeah.
It was So where he goes on the bus, right? And so he leaves town. Whereas so this one, he just kind of goes back to his suburban life, right?
And he manages to kind of they try and put one over on him, right? But he manages to get out with the money so he can kind of cash out, I suppose.
Right.
Just in time, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then the sting at the end, the coda is there's another guy who's kind of taking his place, right? The other Pimp character.
Right. And I guess the other big difference is that the Mac was about his rise, right? He got out of prison and started to become it, and so it was like a montage of him becoming as a Pimp, whereas this one, he's already kind of successful from the beginning, right?
The Black Baron's already the man here, right?
He's already had this kind of double life, right? So,
and there's a lot more. This is a lot more. It's a lot more in exploitation territory. There's a lot more nudity and like gratuitous violence, including someone getting their hand shoved in a garbage disposal, like a couple of years before Rolling Thunder, right? The film that made that famous, So that was interesting. Watching it this time, because I think the last time I saw this film as well would have been the UK video release years ago, which I think was quite heavily cut as well. So I'm not sure if the hand in the garbage disposal scene made it into the UK video cut. So I might not previously had noticed that thing predated Rolling Thunder in this film.
But I think in general it was just as much fun as the Mac. I mean,
it's quite good fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you like this sort of theme and this kind of story, it was, I sometimes I find myself watching it in the ways that it's not meant to be watched. I watch it and I'm like, oh well, if he's like a suburban working guy during the day, but he didn't really show what he did during the day. Like he didn't go to work or anything. Did he have a job?
I think no. He was apparently away on business or something like that.
Right. Yeah. On business. Yeah.
But he still had to kind of wake up and do things in the garden and
he was like gardening and stuff like that. But I remember watching like oh man, I feel so bad for him. Well, when does he sleep? He must be so tired all the time. So like,
you're feeling bad for the
Pimp. Feel bad for the Pimp who doesn't have time to sleep because he's But it was I like it was like I guess the other big difference from the Mac was the double life idea, right? So
yes.
So after I saw this, I wished I had picked as my reaction a little bit more of like a double life kind of movie, because I think really part of it. But I'll tell you why I picked mine when we get there. But yeah, I liked that kind of idea of like, the having the two sides of the coin, and having
Right.
having like a being someone by day and someone else by night, and being like a really, really bad man, and being a really, really nice, gardening father, by day. I think it's kind of a fun idea that I don't think has
Also,
been really explored much before.
how the hell do you kind of make yourself, you're lying in bed with Marilyn Joy all over you, and you're like, you have to force yourself to get up and go out to work, right? You're like, why don't I just lie here? This is great. What the hell? But in terms of like lost sleep or whatever, it's clearly as implausible as Fight Club, right? Like getting around to doing all this stuff,
Right, yeah. But I mean, it was. I would have liked to have. I wish they had explored the idea of the double life a little bit more. It was just sort of like a couple scenes of him being the suburban guy,
right?
And then that was it. And then it was more, as you said, the meat of it was him as the pimp, and then at the end he just went back to suburban life. But I would have liked to have seen him like having to deal with the two sides more, in terms of like, or like having like maybe even having some spilling over into each other's world and trying to keep them separate, like more difficulty. I think that would have been a fun idea, but they didn't really explore it.
I suppose it's a very cartoonish film all the way, right? So I'm not sure how much they want to get into, some very committed acting in this film as well. I mean, I know it's a little while since you saw it, but surely, so the two racist cop characters, George Buckflower is one of them, who's kind of familiar face, who actually, oddly enough, in watching him in this for the very first time, I thought, George Buckflower reminds me a little bit of our old friend Dennis Falk. There's a little bit of Dennis about George Buckflower. I have to bring this up with him sometime. But the other guy, Richard Kennedy, under the pseudonym Edward Rome. My God, this man is
he was swinging for the fences. Yes.
Yeah, and aided by his amazing eyebrows as well, right?
Oh, right.
This. He really knows how to cackle, doesn't he? Does Richard?
He went for it. Like there was no like. You knew exactly what character he was, and there was no getting around it. So good for him for committing. I mean, he was sort of like
I'm a Richard Kennedy fan now. I'm gonna be on the lookout for more of his
stuff. So he was good fun. And I think I don't know how much I also have to say, but I think it was good fun, and I mean, I know that the what was the actor from the Mac? The main guy,
Max Julian.
Yeah. So I remember I said originally I didn't really like him much at first because he didn't feel like kind of authentic. He felt kind of operated. But this guy, I was good. Then he grew on me. Whereas this guy, I think, sort of.
John Daniels is the Black Baron, right?
Yeah, he's fit the idea a lot more, kind of perfectly. I guess, right? Which is for better or worse, I guess, right? But
I'm surprised he wasn't in many. Like he wasn't more of a kind of. In the minor leagues and next, I'm surprised he wasn't more of a blaxploitation star, actually, because, like I said, he was in this and he was in Black Shampoo, are the two big ones he did. But I think he was only in a handful of other things, and I'm not sure if he was the leading role. I think he was in Bare Knuckles, but I can't remember if he was the main guy in that or not. But he's not necessarily. He didn't gain as much traction as you think he might have done, because, like you said, he kind of looks the part, and he's a cool dude, right, as the Black Baron. Also, I think Chinese American actress playing a Native American.
Yes, that was a little bit like.
But super cute, I thought. And not in anything else, as far as I know, unfortunately.
Yeah, I thought that was very sweet. Like, if she was like Asian in origin, why not just make her an Asian character? Like, why did they insist on making her Native American, despite the fact she was obviously Asian? Like, I thought it was really because I mean, they could have just given her like a kimono and just made her that character. You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was a very strange choice that.
Yeah, because they give her the headdress and
Yeah. I mean, they could have just, gone
Maybe
that way, right? So
maybe they'd already written Richard Kennedy's racist dialogue before, because he said something like, do me a favor, like, as soon as you hit them totem poles, just keep on running or something. There's a lot of stuff like that. But I looked her up and I was immediately disappointed that she wasn't in anything else, because I liked her almost as much as I like Marilyn Joy. Written by George Thikos, who also directed the original version of the film The Love Butcher from the same year, but then got kind of redone. But yeah, that's it in kind of interesting in terms of interesting credits, I think. And I agree with you. I mean, I remember this being fun, and it was fun again. And that's about all you can kind of ask from a film like this. That it's all the way through, right?
I mean, it wasn't really meant to be like a gritty, retrospective, or like a gritty, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a
slice of life.
Well, I was more like a journalistic, or sort of like a dive into the life of a pimp.
Hell no!
Yeah. I mean, it's not meant to be that. I mean, it was meant to be this sort of cartoonish, pimp by night, dad by day, kind of like and it was just sort of like in lots of gratuitous sex and violence, and great. It was good fun.
There is a kind of humor to it as well. I think there's like the other main pimp character. At one point, he loses a game of pool.
Oh yeah.
And then by accidentally the is it called the cue ball, the white ball? Is it cue ball?
Yes.
Yeah, the cue ball accidentally goes in the pocket, right? To which he responds by picking up this cue ball and going, "You white honky motherfucking ball," which made me laugh. I thought that was pretty funny.
That was good. Yeah. There's lots of good. I'll be honest. Unfortunately, I can't remember any specific lines because it's been so long since I watched it. But I thought it was. Yeah, there were a lot of like laugh out loud lines in this movie. So yes.
It's fun. It's a fun little watch, and it's out there now. There's a proper HD as well. So I mean, it's a scratched up print. I mean, it's but it's as good as you're ever going to get, and it looks
right. Yeah,
a nice little relic of its era. I think it's
right.
If you enjoyed the Mac and you want the Mac like with even less kind of social kind of commentary, then if the Mac was a bit too cerebral for you, then maybe the Candidate's Green Man is
what
you're looking for.
I'm your pimp. I wear my hat to the side and walk with a limp. I'm your pimp. I wear my hat to the side and walk with a limp.
Well, so we had gone off of several blaxploitation films, right? We did all the Blackula and the Blackenstein, and the we kind of went around those, and like the and the Mac and blah blah blah. And the problem I think with blaxploitation films is they become almost a sort of cul-de-sac where
right.
They share all the same actors and directors and writers and themes, and one will lead to another. And if we're using our idea of this algorithm of loose connections and loose links, we would end up just sort of getting stuck in blaxploitation movies forever, I think, right? So
right, yeah.
I was trying to figure like how do we get out of this?
and me or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, how do we get out of this sort of like circle, right? I think because it'll just lead to another one, to lead to another one.
Right.
So anyway, so I thought, well, okay, in order to get out of it, something that is sort of linked, but something different that would lead us into a different kind of thing. So I decided to go with 1988's "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucka."
You dirty mother! Just is there something like that in the theme there, right?
Right. So yeah, so "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucka," written and directed by Keenan Ivory Wayans, of course, right? So the Wayans way. Which just as like a total non sequitur, like just a total tangent. I actually once played laser tag with Keenan Ivory Wayans. I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, is that right?
It's a bit of a fun little.
Where was this?
In Los Angeles. I had I worked on a cruise ship for a few years, like a few different ships, and one of the ships that I worked on what came in and out of Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I think the day I signed off of the ship, we had like several hours before my plane left. So me and some of the guys I work with, we went to a laser tag, and somehow randomly we ended up on a team in this laser tag with Keenan Ivory Wayans.
Wow.
Who was, I was playing with his kids, I think, right? So I remember just the one thing, we were in this laser tag thing, and I was with Keenan Ivory Wayans. I was like, hey. He was like, "Hey, how's it going, man?" Like it was just like that much, and then we kind of went off our way to shoot the guys. So, but that's my brush with Keenan Ivory Wayans, I guess, right? So
this would have been when?
Early like 2003-ish.
Okay, so you would have known who he was.
Oh yeah, I knew exactly who he was. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
It wasn't like someone clued you in later. That was
right. I knew who he was, but I mean, I would just sort of like, oh hey, but I didn't like, hey, can I get your autograph? I would just sort of like, hey, how's it going?
Right.
Like, hey,
he looked, because some people, weirdly enough, when you meet them in real life, oddly enough, don't look like them, but he looked like he looks in this.
I think so. I mean, right. I can't really remember any details, but I mean, he did have like a laser tag pack-ons. So I mean, I guess right. So, but he was. I mean, he was recognizable. I knew who he was immediately, right? So.
Do you remember if he was any good at laser tag?
I don't remember that because I think we kind of just went off our own separate ways.
Right. I always allow me to go. My laser tag. I'm assuming laser tag is the same thing. Because in the UK we had I think it was a chain, and it was called Laser Quest, and it was big for a while. Like everywhere, I guess. I don't know if they still even have them. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's basically where you put the thing on and you have a laser gun and you run around, you shoot other people, and if they hit you, that's it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's laser tag.
I always found laser tag like really, really disappointing. Like it was one of those things like when it was new, it was yeah, should we go to the laser pit? I'll go to the laser. And it was always all like the build up was exciting.
Right.
And then when you actually played it was just like, this is boring. This is actually not much fun.
Some people really get into it though. Some people really like get really serious about it, right?
So, rolls and things.
Yeah. And
also, I suppose it is your chance to be Starsky and Hutch for the day, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it also depends on the layout. Like some of the places. I mean, this is totally off topic, I guess, but
never mind.
But some of the places you can go there are get like really, really elaborate and huge, and like you can like meet people and stuff.
Right.
I think it really depends on the how much money the place has, or how
that's true.
How serious you're playing with. And people it's like a paintball, which is the same thing where people get really serious about paintballs, which is the same thing. I think if you into
guess.
that kind of world, it becomes a thing that you can get.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose I've seen ones that are like they've taken over big old warehouses and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think the one I went to in Swansea a few times was like this really cramped little place.
Yeah, it might not be a particularly good one. So
yeah. So I take back what I say. Maybe laser tag is actually totally amazing.
Right. Well, anyway, it was a fun thing to do while I was waiting for my plane. So, and with Keenan Ivory.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, so Keenan Ivory Wayans is in this movie. And
had you seen I'm going to get you sucker? I was curious if you were tempted to ask him how his brother went to the bathroom with all that gold on.
I should have, yeah, but I don't think I had seen this movie. I think I'd seen. I was a In Living Color fan at that point, so.
Okay.
I don't think I'd seen this movie though.
You can fill in because I that's a blind spot. Like I know oddly enough, the Wayans I know predominantly from this film, and just prior to this, they'd made that movie Hollywood Shuffle with Robert Townsend, which is a pretty good, might overall be a funnier film, basically about what it's like to be a jobbing black actor in Hollywood and like all the stereo. I don't know if you've ever seen Hollywood Shuffle, but it's quite good fun. Would be a good. I mean, you choose your whatever, but it would be quite a good companion piece of this. But so I don't really know them. I only know them from this, which I liked, and then they made those shitty, scary movie films. I don't. Other than I'm going to get you sucker, which seems more, a prime Wayans. I've no idea how actually funny or unfunny they were on In Living Color. Like,
well, I was. In Living Color was. It was the shit in the early '90s. Like, I mean, everybody, if you were cool, you watched In Living Color, right? So,
well,
of course, that was.
Cool, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were me and my friends were big In Living Color fans, and of course, that's In Living Color is where Jim Carrey got his start as well, right? So, or not really, well, for his sort of began. He was a stand-up comedian before that.
Doesn't it? Sorry I might not. I was going to say sorry to correct you, but I might not be correcting you. So, but sorry for interrupting you there. But isn't In Living Color? Isn't it even older than that? Isn't it like back into the 80s or?
No. They got In Living Color after this. I think they started In Living Color because of this movie. It was 90, right. I believe. It was like 2 years later.
It was the other way around.
I believe it was early 90s. Yeah. So.
Okay. In that case, I do not apologize for correcting you, but for interrupting.
That's okay. So I believe that they got In Living Color because of this movie. This was sort of like their yes. So In Living Color was quite funny, but it definitely was a product of the time. I've seen some of the sketches again recently,
right?
And I don't think they really hold up all that well, a lot of them, but certainly it was all the rage at the time, right? So it was very trendy at the time, which I think is kind of the case with this movie too. I think where it was very, very popular at the time and considered really, 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 really funny. And
I used to love it.
Maybe it doesn't really hold up that well, I think. So
yeah, well, I think in the interim, for instance, you've had, for example, that movie Black Dynamite, right, which was in similar territory, but is funnier. I think has more gags that hit.
Right.
I've never seen it, but I think wasn't there a Black Dynamite spin-off like TV series or animated series or something as well? I've not seen that, but I don't know if that's any.
Not sure.
Yeah, with Michael J. White, right? The movie.
Right.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one though.
So. In that case, because it sounds as if we had a vaguely similar viewing experience this time, then I would recommend maybe Black Dynamite as maybe doing what this movie doesn't quite do anymore.
Right. So, well, I mean, I think it's, I have sort of a love-hate relationship with parody movies in general. I'm as anyone who's listened to this podcast knows, I'm a big fan of comedy and comedy movies, but generally speaking, genre parody movies, it's really hard to get them to hit. It's really hard to get them to do well. Scary Movie is an example, which is the same with people, but you pick any of those. I mean, with the exception of the Naked Gun movies, which I guess were like the first ones to really, or what were the first one? What would you say the first?
You have to go
Airplane, like those types of ones.
And there's even that one. I guess the proto one is that one, The Big Bus, which came out even before Airplane.
I don't know that one.
Which
yeah,
is
but,
exactly because because I think specifically what you're talking about, and this may seem like splitting hairs to some people, but I think it's worth making the distinction. It's that specific type of parody movie, which I would put into that subcategory of spoof, right? Spoof.
yes,
parody.
exactly. Yeah.
Which, like, yeah, like you said, that it goes, the SUCKA stuff from, and the scary movies fit into, and this certainly fits into that, where you're specifically riffing on
a specific genre or type of movie, right?
Yeah.
So, and there are some of these which I enjoy, which are considered, good. Definitely Mel Brooks is a good example of doing, Young Frankenstein was a good one. I'm a longtime fan of Spaceballs. I think you don't like Spaceballs much, but
I haven't seen it in a long time, but yeah.
Blazing Saddles, I think, is not one of my favorite, but Blazing Saddles is considered, a good spoof of the Westerns by some people. I don't know if it holds up that
well.
They
would be pre-airplane, but again, it's an interesting. I think you're right. I think those in some ways are the granddaddies of it, especially Mel Brooks and his whole career in general. But there's a slight distinction to be made, I think, between the Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, High Anxiety stuff, and then this really specific that airplane Naked Gun thing. It's slightly different again, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah. I'm not sure if there's. Yeah, I know what you mean, that there is a distinction, but I don't know what the distinction is, if they're actually doing different things or if they're just doing it better. You know what I mean? Like there's good ones and bad ones, because there's a lot of those really, really, really shitty ones.
Yes,
and they,
surprising amount.
There's a lot of like direct-to-video ones, which are like, I can't even think of, but like ones that have like,
really long titles.
Really long titles, exactly,
yes.
right? Yeah. So it's and a couple of them, like that one, like one I enjoyed was like not another teen movie, even though that one kind of like I remember enjoying that one, but some of them they so generally speaking, I think the Wayans brothers movies like this one and like the scary movies ones are kind of more in the little more of a miss category for me, but I think they're kind of like they really play to a very specific audience. I think they're like who's the guy that makes like Medea? What's that guy? He's really, really, really popular now. Is a black filmmaker who makes like movies with black specifically just black cast for black audiences. There's one called Medea. He does like a whole bunch.
Lost me now.
Anyway, there's one filmmaker who makes like these, and I think non-black audiences scratch their heads and like, why does anyone like this stuff? But I think
sorry, this person who you're talking about, whose name you're blanking on at the moment, does he make parodies?
Tyler Perry.
Oh, okay. I know the name, but I don't know if I've ever seen a Tyler Perry film.
Yeah, I haven't either, right? So yeah, he's the Medea. I think.
Shall we not talk about something we haven't seen? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, but my point is, how I was trying to connect it, which is that I think he makes movies very specifically for a very specific audience, and they're really, really, really popular for that audience. And I think the other people that are not.
He makes comedies.
Huh? Yes, he makes comedies. Yeah, and I think they're kind of spoofs as well. I believe.
Okay.
But I believe that anyone who they're not designed for scratch their head and like, why is this so popular? And I know that there are some of the most popular movies. Like Tyler Perry is one of the most successful filmmakers of all time. Like he's really, really, really popular. But people who they're not, his movies are designed specifically for these audiences. So I think that's what the Wayans brothers are like. I think they make things that are specifically for a very niche audience, I think.
I would argue against that actually a little bit. I know what you mean. I know what you mean, and it's similar to, like, I was talking oddly enough yesterday about the phenomenon of like comedians who do residencies in Las Vegas for years, for example, and they're hit there, and the rest of the world they're either never heard of
don't get it. Right?
Like, Carrot Top had a Las Vegas residency thing, which is amazing to me. But anyway, I know what you're talking about, but I think the Wayans are more. I think they have a broader. I think they're. I mean,
Well,
mean,
I think you could say that about Tyler Perry too, as well. So, but
the scary movie films, I mean, they were pretty huge, and then they did the White Chicks and stuff like that. They had a pretty, I think they were pretty popular across a broad demographic, and they were awful. Don't get me wrong, the scary movie was terrible, and I think they reignite. I think specifically it was the scary movie. So I think you had the Airplane and stuff like that, and Top Secret, and this I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker came out almost towards the end of that cycle, and it was a bit of a bright spot, I think, and then it went dead for a while, and then Naked Gun reignited it, and then you had all those Leslie Nielsen films, and everyone got bored again, and then I think Scary Movie seems to have reignited, and then post Scary Movie, when people were able to shoot digital, that's when you got that endless slew of really cheap and funny direct-to-video parodies that with long-ass titles that parody, and they would parody. They would parody not just one genre at a time. They would do multi-genres, right? Like
or they would do. They would try to reference as many movies in that genre as they could.
Exactly. So that you'd have like, I Know What You Did Last, Paranormal, Scream.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So, but that being said, this movie, I haven't actually talked about this movie specifically, but this movie, I'm going to get you a second, there were moments where I laughed. I mean, I didn't expect to laugh because I knew what I was expecting, like a scary movie type movie, which I've never laughed at a scary movie at the scary movie series. But this one, there was a couple points where I thought I chuckled. I thought it was, oh, that's kind of clever. That's all right. So they had a couple good ideas. But I think overall, I think that it just sort of falls apart a little bit, and they didn't really have a clear story. I think if it's good if you have a good story. I don't know what was.
For people who don't know, because we did not actually mention it, what broadly is it spoofing and parodying?
So it's spoofing, of course, the blaxploitation movies, right? So I mean, it's all right. So that's why it was the connection that I made, right? So it was a spoof of blaxploitation movies. So that's why I was hoping to use this to get away from blaxploitation by going into comedy, or at least spoof movies, or at least comedies, or whatever. So, yes. So basically it's the you can't really explain the story. The story is kind of a mess. I didn't really.
Well, I mean,
there's like a nice guy.
You could say it's Keenan Ivory Wise plays the main character. He comes back from being in the army, and his brother dies of OG, right, which is an overdose of gold chains, which is quite a good gag.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And basically the street, rather than drugs, they have to take the streets back from gold chains.
Right.
So he goes to Bernie Casey and Jim Brown are like Hammer and Slammer, right? And oh no, which ones? I get confused because Isaac Hayes is in it. And Isaac Hayes is like, I figured out that Isaac Hayes is one of those just naturally funny people. Like you just have to look at Isaac Hayes and you're already kind of smiling. Right? Very ingratiating kind of character. Bernie Casey would be in a Hitman, Jim Brown had been in lots of, and let's not forget, Isaac Hayes, not only did he do the Shaft scene, he starred in his own blaxploitation movie called Truck Turner, which is a lot of fun. That has an all pimp funeral scene, which is awesome.
Right.
So that's the thing. It's the taking back the streets.
Right, and you know, and of course you've got like movies like Candy Tangerine Man, where the pimp's always decked out in like a really like fancy or loud or colorful outfit, and so they take that to the extreme here, where they all got really giant hats, right? And the hats are like the point where one guy's got a hat with like a dwarf inside of it with like a gun, right?
Phil from Macaro, Let us not forget as well, Antonio Fargas, winning Pimp of the Year, and he gets to recite his awesome poem, "My Bitch Better Have My Money," which is another one of my favorite scenes.
Referring back to the Mac, where they had
absolutely.
So it's all right in there. And then so it was, and then of course I don't remember if I even ever saw this movie when I was younger. The only thing that I remember about it was the fish in the platforms.
Right.
That was the only thing that I remembered. I remember that there was like a thing where Pimp was wearing platform shoes with fish inside of it, right? So, but
go fish.
Go fish. Anyway, I thought even though it didn't, I mean, there's a couple good things. I think it was probably really the product of its time, right? So it's like a late 80s, you know, kind of spoof parody film, which, you know, again, it was the thing that with that's important also to remember about parody or spoof movies is in order to be a successful parody or a successful spoof, you have to be like intimately familiar with the source material.
Right.
Right. And so that's why what I meant by this is sort of designed for like a very more of a niche audience, because not everyone was that familiar with blaxploitation.
I guess so. I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think in general, I think it was for people, you had to know blaxploitation movies and movies like The Mac, and the fact that there was a Pimp of the Year, you know, type of scene in those types of movies in order to get these jokes, right? So
right. And I think it speaks as well to why I think one of the reasons this, because I agree with you, this film doesn't hold up necessarily as well as, because I remember really liking, and me and my friends really liking I'm Gonna Get You Sucka, which I totally found at random. They were showing it late at night on TV, and I just taped it off late night TV, and then found it, and because I had seen some things, you know, I got the references, and I think the reason it was is because you didn't have another parody of this stuff at that time, right? So it was even then when I liked it, I broadly kind of understood that there's a hit and miss format, and no, it doesn't all hit. Some of them it's but because it's talking about this larger cinematic world which I was interested in, and because it wasn't that mainstream, it also felt slightly more intimate. It was just cool to see a film that was actually referencing it. So therefore you had a lot of goodwill towards it. So when it was just kind of skating along and there wasn't a good joke for a while, you just kind of, that's okay, don't worry, just relax, give it a benefit of the doubt. And then every now and again, there's a solid gag, you know, and so you just kind of like it. And then, and of course, being a, you know, you've got Steve James as a Kung Fu Joe, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say I really liked that character a lot.
Yeah.
Like, every time you go, that's pretty funny.
Kind of like I'm wondering why I was maybe Jim Kelly didn't want to come and do his own Black Belt Jones parody or something, but yeah, you killed my teacher and all that. Yeah, he was fun. I like Kung Fu. So I think what's happened in the interim is it's no longer singular or unique. There's a lot of stuff, right? So you don't have to, there isn't that kind of special pleading, you know, so you can just kind of, you can call it for what it is. You can say, it's all right. It's got some good gags. Some of it's a bit weak.
It's definitely better than the long title ones.
Oh,
you know, that you can
sure.
It's definitely better than that. It's sort of, it's kind of like a middle of the road spoof movie.
Yeah, and it's a proper film as well. You know, it's a film, and it looks you know, good, and it's good production values, and there's recognizable name actors who are doing kind of you know, a good job with sometimes difficult. I mean, Antonio Fargas is just he's just great. I think he's just like like you can give him anything, and again, speaking to Isaac Hayes' wonderful kind of personality as well, is like he gets away with it as well, like, because he's just it's Isaac Hayes, great. Isaac Hayes, it's fantastic. You got John Vernon in there playing the main Mr. Big villain. I always like seeing him. You know, Clu Gallagher. I suppose we should talk about you know, names who are not names yet. I suppose the biggest one here is Chris Rock.
Yes, who is like, again, and actually there's a lot of, like, before they were famous, of course there's like I don't know, like 10 Wayans brothers. I can't remember all of them, but
they're all in there as well.
In the scene where with the goldfish and you know, the goldfish platforms, and he's walking and his fish and his you know, shoes are breaking and he's crying and everyone's all laughing at him. There's a couple of the other Wayans brothers, the younger Wayans brothers, in the crowd just laughing at him, who actually they've all gone on to have their own, you know, careers as well. So they're all, there's lots of, I think there's a lot of, like, before they were famous people.
Probably a lot of people I still don't know who are famous.
Right. So.
But the other thing as well, is going back to another film we've talked on here, what do you think? Do you think that period Payne's gag was just an Exorcist gag, or do you think it was specifically an Abbey gag?
I'm not sure if it was specifically. It could have been. Yeah, it didn't occur to me, but definitely, it could have been.
About that.
Yeah. Yeah, but it did send me down a little bit of a rabbit hole in terms of philosophizing about why spoof movies are so hit and miss. Like they're basically like I mean, they're in terms of comedy. There's sort of like levels of comedy, right? You know, there's like you can there's like the comedy in general is kind of like less respected than drama. You can say this, you could say that for whatever.
Not
and
many comedies win Oscars, for example.
Exactly right. Yeah. So there's a lot of like things you can think and reasons you could think why that may be and stuff like that. But and even in the genre of comedy, there's like highbrow and lowbrow, and then even like there's like the comedy that's less respected than other comedy. You know what I mean?
It's
so
like
I would have to say, yeah. There's definitely like a hierarchy, and I would definitely say that spoof comedy is really, really low down there. Like it's really low in terms of the respected types of comedy. And I was wondering why. I mean, but of course, not always. I mean, look at people like Weird Al. Weird Al does, Weird Al Yankovic. I mean, he's, had a.
But I think he's probably considered. I mean, for the type, because you're talking about people who consider things in that way, right? Which we don't necessarily do. I think among those people, I think Weird Al is probably considered kind of lowbrow, right?
I don't think so. I think Weird Al actually is a lot more respected than you think. Like a lot of like musicians feel honored when he like spoofs their songs like that. So it's
isn't there a Weird Al biopic coming out?
Yes, there is. Yeah. I'm really excited about that. Yes.
And who is it playing? So I was quite surprised. I can't remember now. I remember. Oh, he's playing Weird Al. I was kind of.
Daniel Radcliffe.
Okay.
Yeah, Harry Potter himself is playing Weird Al. Yeah, so I'm really excited to see that actually. Yeah. So I'm really into that. But anyway, but I was wondering why is that? And I guess it just has to be that a lot of comedy is character based or story based, whereas spoof comedy is gag based, right? Or it's specifically purely gag based, and it's purely wink wink to the audience, like hey, isn't this funny? Do you remember get this reference? Honk honk honk, right? And there's a lot more kind of like I guess there's more self-awareness with spoof comedy, right? Like,
I'll tell you why
I think maybe it makes it less endearing as an art form.
I think it leads to people thinking of it, snobby people thinking of it as lesser in some way, is because at its worst it is literally just someone referencing something else and then thinking that's enough. And it's not. But the people who do it well, they do more than that, right? Like, but some fucking crappy thing which is just an exorcist scene, but hey, look, it's but
get it, Exorcist?
Yeah, but also she farts or something like that. It's like, is that all you've got? Is that all you're bringing? It's like
right.
So I think that's why it's legit to a certain extent, because a lot of that stuff is shit, right? But not all. I think when it's done well, then it can. I mean, I'm trying to think what are the best. I suppose the original Airplane, The First Naked Gun. I've always been quite fond of Top Secret. Like you said, I suppose if you extend it, Young Frankenstein's probably the classic of the genre, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But so many films that just do it badly. They don't understand that it's not enough just to point.
Yeah. And I think you got it around the head there. Yeah, it's not. They think that the reference is the joke, but you can't just reference it. You have to actually make it. You have to have a punchline, right? You've got to have something. You've got to heighten it. You've got to defy expectations about it, right? So that I think it's the easiest comedy to be lazy with. I think that's the idea, right? So so it ends up being just. I think that's why it's considered, and it's so easy to do badly. It's so easy to do that part badly. So it's So I think it's too bad that it's kind of got such a bad rap, just because of I think lazy people. Like people just let's do a movie where they have her head spins around and then she farts. Hey, that'll be good enough. Yeah, so yeah. People laugh.
I don't think that fits in that category. I like I said, time hasn't necessarily been kind to it, and it's still got some laughs. Not so much in terms of laughs, but I was thinking some things that haven't dated, particularly like you wouldn't get now. there was what I mean. This gag actually this made me laugh, and then I almost I felt guilty about laughing because it's that kind of thing you wouldn't necessarily do in a gag. When they have like this ghetto youth gang competition, right?
Oh yeah.
And all the sports are like running down the street with television sets while chased by dogs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and of course it's legit because it's coming from the Wyatts, right? It's
right.
You know, but I was thinking you probably wouldn't do that gag now.
Right? Now, yes, of course. Yeah.
But it is a pretty funny gag. And then another gag which wasn't funny at all, and you're thinking that seems in bad taste, was the whole thing where there's the sexy woman who takes her wig off and then her fake head. And I mean, it also doesn't help that it's just not funny, but it also that seemed like you wouldn't do that now. Post Oscar scandal, right?
Right. And also she I was I guess you had to really, because it was very 80s, and so you kind of had to have your sort of like suspension of disbelief that she was meant to be sexy at the beginning.
Okay, didn't do it for you.
I was like, this is supposed to be a sexy woman. Okay.
Right.
But I don't know. But I mean, Keenan Ivory Wayans, like he's not really known for his acting. He's more of like he's the director writer. But I think he sold his sort of like naive. Yeah, wide-eyed naive guy, and they I think the rest of them, they all had fun. Like Damon, Damon Wayans is always like that.
Let me ask you in closing, for me at least, the one thing, because for me there was a very it's kind of consistent. Like I said, time hasn't necessarily been kind, but I think I always had that in my back of my mind. So my opinion hasn't massively changed. It's just the stuff around it, and did this either surprise? Did you remember this as being more hilarious and it was let down, or was this kind of what you were expecting? Or
well, as I said, the only thing I remembered was the goldfish, and so I'm not sure if I had only seen like a couple scenes on TV, and I never saw the whole movie, because I had no real memory of this movie at all. I mean, I knew what it was about.
Right, so it wasn't an old favorite you were returning.
It wasn't an old favorite for me. Yeah, it was.
I assumed that's what it was. You see.
Yeah. So most of it was new for me. Whether that's just because I don't remember it or because it really was new. But I mean, as I said, when we're talking about the really like bottom of the barrel types of parody or spoof comedy, I don't think this is that. I think as I said, I think it's not the best the genre has to offer, but I don't. It's definitely not the worst. I think it's really just sort of like middle of the road.
Yeah, that's fair. I think. Yeah.
Again, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. So
it's probably better than even in that mid-brow category as well. It's certainly better than like Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Right.
Which I remember seeing in a theater, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember that being like I remember some lines, but I won't quote.
Yeah. So I think that's us for this time on the Magic Wand. Here's hoping, because Ron's choice is up next, so I'm hoping and praying that he doesn't choose I Know What You Screamed Last, Matrix, Activity, whatever the fuck those things are.
Or 3.
Yeah.
That's fun.
I'm pretty sure he won't, because it's not Valentine's Day. So
I'm gonna get you, sucker.